I'm Adeline Rourke, 34, librarian, not the kind people notice, not the kind people invite, until they need a seat filled. The envelope came on a Thursday, velvet, heavy, too much effort for someone they forgot existed. No return address, just a seal, city crest, my brother's name embossed in gold like he earned it. Inside, you are cordially invited to the retirement gala of Mayor Thomas Rourke. Black tie, no +1. That part made me laugh. No +1. As if I had someone left to bring, they didn't even write Adeline. Just A. Rourke. Like they weren't sure which of us was still alive, or worth naming. No note, no hope you'll come. No, thank you for showing up for the last funeral alone. I stared at the card for a long time, then slid it between page 112 and 113 of the Bridges of Memory. Grandpa gave me that book when I was 9. He said, "If they forget your name, make sure they don't forget your work." He built bridges, literally, and also me, when my parents chose campaign dinners over bedtime stories. He chose me. When Thomas took credit, he just kept working. Quiet men don't get speeches, they get used. 3 years ago, he died. No reporters, no tributes, just me, a folded flag, and a box of tools that still smell like him. Thomas gave a eulogy, said Grandpa believed in service, then went on to name a conference room after himself. I didn't go to the dedication, wasn't invited, not surprising, but now they wanted me, front row, to clap for the man who erased the one who built him. I wasn't going to go, not until I remembered the cassette. Old, worn, labeled in Grandpa's handwriting, "Play this if they forget who held it up." I played it. His voice cracked through the static like a beam under strain. "Kiddo, if they're trying to make noise, remind them who made it stand still." So I picked a dress I could move in, tied my hair back, took the tape, not to be seen, not to speak, just to hold something steady, while everything else collapsed under its own weight. The tape was in a drawer he told no one about, back of the garage, under a rusted flashlight and 2 bent nails, wrapped in duct tape, labeled in his handwriting, "For her, if they forget." They forgot, so I pressed play. His voice came through the static, rough, unapologetic. "If they're clapping, it's because they think you stayed quiet. That's fine. They don't need to hear you. But they damn well better remember me." I sat on the cold floor, didn't cry, didn't blink. The garage smelled like motor oil and stubbornness, exactly like him when I was little. He let me hold the chalk at job sites, taught me how to mark cracks before they spread, said, "Bridges don't scream when they're about to break, they whisper." Thomas never heard that. He never stayed long enough. Too busy shining shoes that never touched gravel. Grandpa never said much, but when he did, you didn't forget it. Titles come and go, bolts stay tight or they don't. You want praise, build something that holds. He never bragged, never asked for thanks, but he kept every blueprint in a tin box, and he marked the ones I traced in red, said I had an eye for weight. The night he died, I didn't go to the hospital. He wouldn't have wanted that. He would have wanted me to check the tension cables on the south ramp, so I did. That was the last thing he ever taught me. Keep things from falling, even when no one's looking, especially then. The gala was at City Hall. Red carpet, champagne towers, glass chandeliers they rented just for the photos. I entered through the service door. No one stopped me. I guess a plain black dress doesn't look like a threat. Inside, it was all gold and white. Every face I passed looked polished, like they practiced being seen. Thomas was at the center. Of course he was. Flanked by donors, backlit like a campaign ad. He smiled like he owned the air. said hello to a senator, ignored the man who built half the city holding him up. There was a model of Willow Ridge Bridge near the cake, sculpted in chocolate, too pretty to be real. The real one still creaks when it rains. Grandpa liked it that way. Said a bridge should talk to you. I stood by the back wall, near the soundboard, hands in pockets. Thumb brushing the edge of the recorder, I waited. Thomas stepped up to the mic. The room dimmed. A spotlight found him. He looked around like he'd built every person in that room. Then he said it. If Charles Rourke were here tonight, I know he'd be proud. My chest didn't tighten. I didn't flinch, just breathed in. And reached for the tape. That was the line. The one he rehearsed. The one he thought would make everything okay. He thought the dead stayed quiet. He was wrong. The soundboard was left unattended. Too many flutes. Too much champagne. I stepped behind the curtain. No one looked twice. Black dress, black thoughts. Easy to miss. The plug-in jack sat open. I didn't ask permission. Didn't need to. The tape was already spinning. It just needed air. I waited for Thomas to say the line he rehearsed, the one he thought would make people forget the rest. If Grandpa were here. That was enough. I pressed play, a soft hiss, then his voice, not Thomas's, Grandpa's. If they're hearing this. They forgot who laid the first beam. People turned. A few gasped. Someone dropped a fork. They talk about vision, but forget weight, forget cracks, forget the hands that held it all before it fell. Thomas froze, no spin, no PR team, no backup script. I didn't ask to be remembered, but I won't let them lie about who showed up. The ballroom held its breath. Even the music stopped. Like it knew, I didn't move, didn't smile, just stood behind the curtain. And let truth do what applause never could. Thomas tried to recover, cleared his throat, laughed like it was some kind of mix-up. That recording, I don't know where it came from, but let's focus on tonight, shall we? Eyes turned, not toward him, toward me. I stepped out from behind the curtain. Nothing dramatic, just 2 feet on polished stone. I didn't take the mic. I didn't ask, I just spoke. He gave me the tape, not because he wanted attention, because he knew what silence sounds like when it's forced. People watched, no one moved. You talked about legacy, he built it. You cut ribbons, he held bolts in the rain. Thomas looked everywhere but at me. You wear his name. But I remember the weight. I held up the recorder, still warm, still playing faint static like it wasn't ready to stop. He didn't ask me to defend him. He asked me to make sure truth didn't rot in the foundation. That was all. I placed the recorder on the podium, let it sit there, alive, and I walked off the stage. No one clapped, not yet. They were still trying to figure out which version of the story. They'd believed too easily. I didn't plan to show the papers, but I brought them, just in case. Thick envelope. Old, heavy, his handwriting on the flap, only if they pretend it wasn't hers. They pretended, so I opened it. 3 pages, legal, not emotional. The first, land transfer, the bridge. The maintenance fund, every bolt he ever paid for. In my name. The second, a trust, private, created by him. Signed, notarized, dated 1 month before his last hospital visit. The third, not legal, just him, a note. They'll try to speak louder. You don't need to match them, just carry the paper. That's how real weight works. I walked back to the mic, didn't ask for silence. It was already there, held up the envelope, no drama. You built the speeches, he left me the structure. I handed the documents to the city attorney. He scanned the first line, his brow twitched, he nodded. It's all valid. Someone in the room whispered, "What does that mean?" Someone else answered, "It means she owns it." Thomas didn't speak, didn't blink. I looked at him. You inherited the spotlight, I inherited the bolts. No ribbon cutting, no press, just a Tuesday morning, overcast. The city offered a ceremony. I declined. They asked what I wanted the plaque to say. I sent them 4 lines. Willow Ridge Bridge. Structural lead, Charles E. Rourke. He didn't raise his voice. He just held it together. The worker shrugged when I handed it over. Didn't ask questions. Didn't care. That was fine. I came alone. Brought a screwdriver. Used the bolts Grandpa left in a jar labeled just in case the city forgets. The plaque wasn't large. Didn't shine, but it caught the light just enough. When the clouds moved, a jogger passed behind me, didn't look twice. Perfect. I stepped back, read the words again, felt the metal with my hand, not for approval, just for proof. He was back where he belonged. Not on stage, not in speeches, but on steel, where rust and rain might try. But wouldn't win. The garage hadn't changed. Dust settled like it belonged there. So did I. I opened his workbench. Bottom drawer, still stuck. Still kicked it. Inside, tools, scrap metal. A folded piece of paper wedged between 2 washers. No envelope, just graphite on old notebook stock. 1 line, if she's holding this, then nothing broke. That was it, no signature, no date, just his handwriting. Sharp, confident, like he meant every letter. Even if no one else would ever see it. I didn't frame it, didn't copy it, just folded it back, and put it where I found it. Some things don't need an audience. Some things just need to be there, when everything else is.